Hello world. I had a bit of an insomniac-y kind of night last night and found myself at some bizarre hour of the morning looking at vinyl channels. And one of them that I found was a very good one, run by this very young and far trendier and nicer looking person than me, called Ben Simpson. And he's got a really good channel actually, and one of the things that he tends to specialise in, although he's got loads of Beatles stuff and just loads of generally good music, but one of the things that he specialises in is soundtracks of horror movies. And the soundtracks area is not necessarily something that I'm majorly interested in, but it tends to be quite a lucrative area of the vinyl collector market, and you do find rare soundtracks going on eBay for absolutely astronomical figures. And it's a very interesting thing to get into, and if you're that person that is interested in it, then go along to his channel. I've actually put a link to it on my channel page, so click on my name underneath this video and you'll find there's a list of channels there, and one of them is Ben Simpson, who as I say, is the owner of this channel. Ooh. Right, the reason why I'm making this video today is because Ben made a video called Things I Don't Like About Collecting Vinyl Records, and it was a piece of fun and I really enjoyed watching it, and it made me laugh as well, which was quite nice really. It made me laugh, you know, that noise that goes on in the back of your throat. So yeah, he had 13 things on his list, and he put them in a little diddly notebook. I've got a massive notebook where I've written down his 13 things. I'd just like to respond to them really. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. And in a way, I could have called this video Dispelling Myths About Vinyl. Now, this is not like the hi-fi marketing myths that I've done in the past. This is things that casual observers who don't really know much about vinyl records seem to think there are problems with, and actually no, they're not. And the light is going all funny in here, so I'm going all into darkness, and I could be a horror movie. Good evening, horror lovers. God, I look absolutely terrible. Never mind. So without further ado, I'm going to list these things and just come back at one or two of them, okay? If I agree with him, you will hear this sound. Yes, it is. If I disagree, or if I think that there's actually a solution to it, then I'll actually explain it just a little bit more. But I won't go on forever. I do promise I'll try and keep this below about 20 minutes, so bear with me, okay? Number one, he said inconvenience. Yes, they do take up more space than CDs. My shelf is full of records. I have it over there, and I have records behind my settee over there that you can't see as well. I have records in my bedroom. I have had to take out basically most of my classical ones so that my pop records and things can actually sit where I can actually reach them and play them, because I tend to play more pop music than classical, even though I do like classical music and I'm not a Philistine. I think, you know, he talked about faff as well. Yes, they are a faff, and this is all coming under number one, inconvenience. Yes, they're a faff. And for me, the biggest faff, because I'm not necessarily the most majorly house-proud person, is dust. Okay, keep all dust away from records and record players. The air turned blue the other day. I was playing my brand new Fall Out Boy album, which is a lovely blue vinyl-y thing. It's like a creamy white and blue thing that kind of resembles the sky kind of thing. And those kind of coloured vinyl things tend to attract more static electricity than the other things. And I like that album by Fall Out Boy, so I was playing it, you know, 2 or 3 times, and each time that I lifted the stylus up and moved it to the side of the armrest thing, you heard the word motherfuck. Because, and I really am terribly sorry about swearing, but I'm not really, because I'm a grown-up and I'm allowed. But yeah, you heard motherfuck, because this thing just hit me with the biggest bolt of static electricity, and it's dust. It really is just dust. So get something like a gold ring, sort of velvety kind of brush thing, and get rid of the dust. Okay, the other thing that annoys me, and I'll talk about it further a bit later on, is the plastic covers that HMV in particular now will try and sell you for 75p when you buy a new record. And I actually bought about 10 of these, and most of my records that had gatefold sleeves didn't fit in the damn things, and B, when you're any of these plastic sleeves, regardless of whether they're the ones that have got like a pouch that you kind of seal the thing in, or that just slide over your records, whatever, they end up looking really tatty, really gunky, and they go all yellow, and they don't slide onto shelves conveniently, and they just end up looking really awful, taking up more space that you could probably use with a few more records instead. And so I'm tending to chuck away lots of these things as and when I play the records. If I see a tatty one of those, I'll just chuck it away. If you look after your sleeves, put the records back in the right sleeves and all that kind of stuff, then generally nothing really should happen to them. The only thing that I would say in terms of getting dust away from your records is to buy white anti-static sleeves. More and more records are coming with these, but having said that, it's still really shocking how many manufacturers are still putting in paper lyric sleeves that are supposed to protect your record, when in fact actually they don't. They damage the record every time it moves out. Same with the cardboard sleeves as well, or the cardboard inner sleeves as it were. You just want to get, and again, these really don't cost very much money, you know, compared to how much you pay for a record player. £10 will buy you about 50 of these things, and yeah, they're inner anti-static sleeves, and you can get white or black ones, and yeah, it's well worth it, because that will actually protect the record. It will protect the inner sleeve, and you'll just have to see below really for a little bit more about that. But anyway, yes, they are inconvenient, but you know, it's effort into playing the darn things, and B, it's also, you know, you do get better sound quality from records, provided you play them on a decent deck. Let's see below. Okay, number 2, the expense of it. Yes, it is. From buying a decent deck to start with, amplifiers, speakers, records themselves if you buy new ones, but it's fun, and you know, it all depends on what you want to spend your money on. And if you are a fully fledged adult in charge of your own money, then I believe that you've worked hard and you are entitled to spend it on whatever you like. Number 3, mail damage. Yes, it is. Records that arrive damaged in the mail. I showed you my Pure set by Paul McCartney, which only arrived the other day, and as I say, I'd only played it once, and already the before I'd even taken it out of the packaging, the records had scuffed spine sort of cardboard on there, which meant that you couldn't read what was on the spine because the thing was scuffed and horrible. So yes, it is. 4, skips on records that don't sound very nice and stuff like that. This is the biggest myth, I think, that gets perpetrated by people who don't know any better. I'm not counting Ben Simpson as someone who doesn't know any better, but actually, if you've got a decent enough record player, and I made this video called What's Better Than a Crosley, because I'm assuming that a lot of people, I don't know what his system is, but I'm assuming that a lot of people that are young and trendy and into being the VC, that's one of my pet hates. I can't stand the vinyl community. I'm a music lover. I just love music, all right? I do like records on vinyl, but I'm not a VC, because, you know, nobody likes me, put it that way. Yeah, so you know, what I'm basically saying is that people who are not in this elusive kind of group called the VC seem to think that records skip, and in fact it's pretty rare that a record will ever skip. Okay, and by and large you should not try and tamper with either your deck or your record to try and remove that skip. There are one or two safe ways if it's just a little surface thing, if it's just a bit of, I don't know, gunk or something like that that's wedged its way onto your record and won't come away and is causing the record to jump back, jump back, jump back, jump back, and never do that. That hurt, by the way. So yeah, the causes of records if they do skip. Number one, I have had my first record deck when I first started collecting vinyl, and we are going back now, oh my god, it must be the best part of 15 years or something like that. It was around about 2002, 2003, something like that. The first serious record deck that I got, and I already had a hi-fi system that consisted of a decent CD player, amp and speakers. So I didn't need to worry about buying any ancillaries. But the first thing I did was look around. We had a vintage second-hand shop where I lived, and I basically saw this thing, 70 quid, and it was a vintage Goldring Lenco GL75 record deck that was hi-fi at its time. So it was a record deck from around about 1969, 1970, in extremely good condition. It had been restored by the second-hand seller, who only sold record decks and didn't sell anything else. So, you know, this wasn't like, you know, some tip of a you know, tat store down Hastings. This was a really, you know, dedicated second-hand vintage hi-fi shop, and yeah, he'd done a superb job of restoring this thing. I plugged it in and away I went, and you know, it was as cheap as chips. It was 70 quid, and that included an Audio Technica cartridge that, you know, again, it was probably worth about 15 quid or something like that, but it was all in the price, whatever. He told me not to poo-poo that cartridge, but one of the first things I did was replace that cartridge, and I ended up getting a Goldring 1012 GX, I believe it was, something like that, which at the time cost me under £100, and it was rather fabulous. And you know, you can do these things on a budget, but you know, look at my What's Better Than a Crosley turntable for ways of you know, getting a decent record player that is not going to cause your records to skip. Let me guarantee you that those record players that you see in the window of HMV, and I don't care who makes them, whether they're Crosley or GPO or whatever other brand it is, Aunt Bessie or something like that, whatever it is, it will damage your records. Okay, just do not buy them. Okay, they're, as I say, my Paul McCartney setup, well, sorry, my Paul McCartney box set that I bought the other day, 4 vinyl records, cost 50 quid. And if you can get a record player that doesn't even cost as much as that, it can't be any good. Okay, they have these horrible little sapphire styli on them that will only play about 100 of your records, i.e. is that right? No, they'll play about 50 of your records before they'll start damaging them, before they'll start wearing away. And if you do start, you know, you buy this brand new record, you play it a few times on a Crosley or something like that, and it starts skipping, you have damaged your record. And then anything else that you play that on, you'll damage it, because it's like a virus and it just spreads throughout the mind. And one day you wake up and you find you don't want to play another record or something like that. So yeah, get a decent deck. Whilst I'm here, I'm going to talk about inner groove distortion, because that's another myth. And the myth is cartridge A has more inner groove distortion than cartridge B. Inner groove distortion sounds like your record needs cleaning when you get to the end of the side, because of, you know, its geometry, okay, and because there's actually less kind of let's get a record. This is Di Ross and the Supremes. The outer edge of the record is a much larger circle, capable of storing much more dynamic range. By the time that the cutting machine gets to the inner part of the record, it's a much smaller circle, and it cannot hold quite as much dynamic range as the outside. Okay, there are ways of being able to compensate for this. Also, the fact that your stylus does not track the record in exactly the same way as the record was cut. The record was cut in a straight line. See if I can hold this up here. Okay, see if you can see. So the record was cut in a straight line, like that, and your stylus, if I can see and work this out properly, your stylus kind of tracks in a very gentle arc like that. Now, the way that the cartridge and the needle are aligned in the head shell of your tone arm means that if it's been done properly, it will correct itself so that that arc is not quite as steep, because by the time you get into the middle here, you will start hearing distortion on your record if that is not set up properly. Okay, and I watched some other guy's video. This was, I've forgotten his name now, High Vine News or something like that, I think he is. I might try and find a link to him and pop him down somewhere. But he recorded a video about 3 entry-level decks, and this guy really is a geek. Okay, far more of a geek than me. He checked all of these 3 decks. One of them, I believe, was an AT LP 120. People go for these Audio Technica turntables. The 120 actually has a supposedly decent tone arm with adjustments for tracking force, anti-skating, and the VTA, i.e., you know, how high, you know, to get the tone arm to track parallel to the record. And his conclusions were basically that out of the 3 record players that he tested, one by Project, one by, as I say, Audio Technica, and one by, honestly can't remember, but it wasn't Riga. But none of these had this this cartridge alignment thing set up properly, so that by the time that the record was getting into the middle of the groove, it was starting to mistrack the record, and that will cause damage. It will also cause it to start sounding really yucky by the time that it gets into the middle of the record. So it's not the cartridge itself, it's the person who set up the cartridge. And if you're a newbie and you're buying an entry-level record player, and these record players that he was testing were far better than the Crosleys that were in, you know, that are in the window of HMV, where you've got no chance of adjusting that, and you can guarantee that it will be set up totally wrong to play your records. But yeah, people trust that these things are being set up properly, and they're not. So the best thing to do, I think, is actually to learn how to do it and do it yourself. Okay, because there are just so many record stores and, you know, and manufacturers and things that are just not doing these things properly. Okay, my Riga deck, now I've got an RP8, which is, you know, a fair whack of a turntable and expensive. Yes, it is, but you know, it won't damage my records. Riga also make sort of cheap as cheerful decks as well that cost an nth of that. Sorry, my screensaver went there. I'm jabbering on again, aren't I? I'll try and shut up. Bollocks. I've forgotten where I am. I'll have to edit this video. Yeah, Riga make decks that cost an nth of that are set up properly. And the way that they do it means that there is absolutely no way that it can be set up incorrectly. Okay, and so I would really advise, you know, that the basic record deck for any collector that is spending £20–30 per LP and more, and has got lots of them and really enjoys their records, the absolute minimum that I would suggest is Riga RP1 or Planner 1, I think it's called now. They've changed it slightly. They do it with a very basic cartridge called the Riga Carbon. If you can afford it, try and get the one that's got the Riga Bias cartridge on it, because it's a lot better. But yeah, that is my absolute minimum recommendation for a deck. Shut up. Right, he was talking about skips. Okay, so a decent deck set up properly with that cartridge set up properly will not induce any skips in records. Okay, if you've got a record that skips, you can try and clean it, but again, it's not something that you just grab, you know, a toothbrush and start going like that on them, because you'll damage them. Okay, so again, the absolute minimum that I would recommend is a Disco Anti-Stat, which will probably nowadays cost you less than the Pure set by Paul McCartney. It's basically a kind of plastic bath thing with brushes that will not damage your records. You pour some record cleaning fluid in there, and you get the record cleaning fluid that comes with it, and you prop up this your record in there and spin it round. The brushes brush your records, the fluid gets into the grooves and loosens any kind of dust or whatever in there, and then you get this kind of like draining boardy style thing that, you know, imagine the plates on your draining board, that kind of thing. You pop it in there and just let it dry, and the record cleaning fluid is basically isopropyl alcohol. Now I would say, you know, get your own isopropyl alcohol, but it's getting much harder to just walk into a chemist off the street and buy that, especially in the UK. You know, get some record cleaning fluid. That'll cost you less than an LP. Okay, at a pinch, there was one night I was playing my brand new blue Otis Redding album, a lovely blue vinyl thing. It had obviously got some kind of bit of dirt on it that was causing the needle to jump, to jump, to jump, to jump. Shut up, don't do that to it. What I did was I took a cloth that really should have been cleaning my iMac screen, you know, one of those sort of lens cloths that you kind of, you know, you can clean your glasses with them as well. Really soft and gentle. I put a tiny dot of record cleaning fluid onto that cloth and then just massaged it into the record, and then basically let it spin round for a minute or two until it was dry, and then played the record. Okay, you should never ever play a record while it's wet. All right, so yeah, that's all I'm going to say about skips. They don't actually happen if you've got a basic level of record deck and a basic level of record care. All right. Number 5, they're fragile. Yes, they are, but no, they're not really. Okay. As I say, I've had records that I've tried out on one of my relatives, very, very elderly man now, but one of my relatives had a really, you know, one of these Crosley style record decks. I played my Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young thingy on there. It skipped. I played it on my Goldring Lenko. My Goldring Lenko tracked it perfectly. Okay, so it is to do with the level of your deck as well. Okay, you know, as much as anything else, you know, a proper deck is sturdy. Okay, you know, the tone arm is tracking geometrically much better than it would do on one of those things. It's not applying, you know, too much tracking force to the record. If a decent deck, you know, is applying too much tracking force, you can adjust it, whereas you can't on these things. Okay, and by the way, just going back to the Hi-Vi News, the Asian guy that reviewed these 3 decks, one of the things he found out about the AT-LP 120 is that none of those adjustments on there, although they all look, you know, superb and everything, none of them, particularly the anti-skating, none of it made any difference whatsoever. So the only thing you could really do in terms of upgrading the cartridge was to buy the same one as the thing came with when it wears out. That's all you can do. Okay. Right. They're fragile. Not really. And basically, Ben, you've just got to keep your cats away. And I would say, for me, keep your fags away from your records and keep any barbecue saucy fingers away and that kind of stuff, you know. Just make sure you've got clean hands. And yeah, keep your cats away. Auto lift, he talked about. Yes, it is. Never buy a deck with auto lift. Never buy a deck with auto lift. They just basically, again, for all the same reasons as before, but particularly because they have to track quite heavily, because most of the time these things can drop down one record and then play it and then lift up, come back to the edge and then drop another record down and play that one on top of the other one before. And you need a cartridge that tracks like a drill to be able to play records once they're sort of landing on top of one another. And it really is not good for your records. Just the fact that even the thing goes ka-chunk like that and drops your record down is bad, okay? And you know, you do get the semi-automatic ones which just lift off at the end and don't do all that dropping the record down and crap, but it's extra mechanics and stuff in there that can go wrong. You can spend the money that you would spend on a mechanism if you're a manufacturer. You could spend the money that you'd spend on a mechanism by better by putting a decent tone arm on the thing in the first place, or by, you know, making sure you've got a decent stylus, and you know, all kinds of other ways of, you know, making sure that the thing actually sounds better rather than does those things like lifting off at the end and that sort of thing. So don't, okay? So auto lift, yes it is. Number 7, we're on number 7. Record store day. He had gripes about record store day. Yes, it is, basically. I always forget about record store day. And when I remember that, you know, just about the only places that are near me are really not near me at all that are participating in this thing. So, you know, if there's an album I want, I'll try and find it on Tinternet, on Amazon or something like that. Or maybe it's in HMV or something if I feel like walking down there. But yeah, record store day, yes it is. Snobs. And number 9, audio files. Yeah, I think they probably come in the same bracket really. And I'm an audiophile and I'm a snob when it comes to records, and I'm proud of it. Or at least I'm a little bit of a snob. I really do passionately believe that the standard of record deck that you need to be able to play a record without damaging it, and that's all I'm going to say. You know, you can pay 30 grand on a record player and not even have a tone arm or a needle to play a record with. You know, you've got to spend another 5 grand on getting that. And you know, if I'm saying spend £300 or £400 on a decent deck to start with, you can imagine you know, the nth of a gap of quality that, you know, is not even showing on my screen here, that is between those two decks, okay? But the lower end one will at least play your records to an acceptable standard, and it won't damage them. Anything below that, and particularly these shitty things that have got speakers and amplifiers and all this whatnot built into them, they really are, you know, they just belong in the bin, okay? So yeah, I am a bit of a snob, but I'm proud about it, because I hear every day the quality of vinyl records, and I know that people who buy those really ultra cheap things are not hearing it. They're thinking that they're hearing this quality, and they're kind of being deluded, like Pavlov's dogs or something like that. And you know, it's so yeah. He said, I can't hear the difference between you know, this particular mastering and that particular mastering. Well, I bet you could. Okay, I know you could. Albums in wrong sleeves. He bought some albums that, a couple of Queen albums or something, that have been packaged in the wrong sleeve. News of the World had sheer heart attack inside it or something like that. I don't doubt that that could happen. But yeah, never happened to me. But I got a pair of B&W P7 headphones for 300 quid that I thought were the wireless ones, and when I opened the box, took all the plastic wrapping off and everything, when I got home from London and opened the box, and there was the wired version. So I don't doubt that it can happen, but it's just never happened to me. Number 11, he talks about bonus tracks on albums, and wishing that if you buy a record, you should be getting the same bonus tracks as somebody that's buying the CD. I absolutely and 100% don't agree with that one, because, you know, particularly, you know, you've bought an album like, let's just pretend it's Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, because they're amazing and I'm thinking of them now. And then you go and buy the CD. The album was conceived in a way that each track followed on from the next one, that there was some kind of rhyme or reason as to putting the tracks together in the order that they were put in. And then suddenly you buy the CD and you're expecting this thing to end there, and then you just get a whole load of crap that they absolutely never wanted you to have on the album in the first place. And you know, it's just greed. It's a marketing ploy. As I said in my last video, there is this kind of mentality that goes on within the music industry, which is called SOS, or same old shit. And basically, you know, they even did it with Sam Smith's first album, and I don't doubt that they'll do it with his second album as well. But you know, you can buy the basic album, you can buy the deluxe set that's got, you know, umpteen remixes on it. You can buy another deluxe set that's got, you know, another zwillion remixes on it. You don't ever want to be playing that. Less is more, okay? The basic album, as conceived by the person who is making the album, and you don't want to go and hear a whole load of stuff that they never wanted you to hear in the first place. You know, even a B-side from a single, you know, it is sometimes great to be able to hear a B-side that you that was never included on the album in the first place. But that's why with the Beatles they could have reissued all those albums and put the singles from the same era in. So imagine a copy of Rubber Soul that finishes with Run for Your Life, and then you've suddenly got Day Tripper and We Can Work It Out, and you know, whatever other singles that, you know, Help, no, not Help, but you know, Day Tripper and We Can Work It Out, and whatever other singles were released round about that time on that album. There would be absolute uproar. So what did they do? They released the Past Masters set, which collects together all of the singles and all of the B-sides, and I think that that's what they should do, you know, particularly for, you know, groups that are no longer current or sort of, you know, working as it were, and they've got these fantastic, you know, back collections and stuff. Just get together, you know, all of the tracks that they released in their time and put them onto a separate album, and we'll buy it, you know. Past Masters is an absolutely fantastic set, you know. It's really great. And you know, now it comes on a triple LP. You used to have to buy it on 2 CDs, Past Masters Volume 1 and Past Masters Volume 2, but now, you know, it all comes together and it's, you know, it's great. So yeah, I really don't agree with bonus tracks. Okay, 12, record condition, again C point 10, about you know, not getting the right record in the right sleeve. He talked about semen and vomit. Semen stains and vomit stains on the label. I would never be so bold. But yeah, you know, yeah, you do get people that call a record in good condition. But I think, you know, one of the things that you have to remember is that there is this kind of sliding scale of record. Let me just see if I can find it, because I can see it from here. Hang on. Record Collector magazine have, for as long as I can remember, and even further back than that, had an agreed kind of scale as to words that they will use to determine the condition of the sleeve and the record. And if someone says something's in good condition, then that good condition is that there are, there's mint, there's near mint, there's excellent, there's very good, and then there's good. So it's about 4 thingies down there. So yeah, you might find a bit of vomit or semen somewhere on them, you know. So again, just familiarise yourself with those terms that are in there and the kind of condition that you can expect a record to be in. Okay. And 13, his final one, and God, I've gone on, it's 40 minutes, mother God. Right, double albums with no gatefold and records ripping the sleeve. Yes, it is. That's a pain in the arse. I agree with you. I've just bought the Supremes #1s here. This is a good double album set. This is the kind of anti-static vinyl sleeve, by the way. Buy some of these, put your records in them, keep the cardboard sleeves inside the jacket as well. But yeah, that's a bit of a pain. We do like to have a gatefold because we get a nice picture in there, you know. You could actually get a little bit more information about the actual records and the songs that are on the thing if you had a gatefold sleeve. So yes, I absolutely agree with that. It's a pain in the arse, and you know, records that cut through these things are easily replaceable as well. They're not too expensive. This stuff here will take some of the static charge away from the record. My Fallout Boy thing that gave me those blooming awful shocks came in a cardboard thing, and really I ought to replace it with one of these. I've got some. I will put it in there because that will get rid of the anti-static charge. All right, I am going to disappear now. I have gone on for far too long, as per usual, and I always say I'll try not to, but I do. Hopefully you enjoy it, and thanks Ben, that was a really brilliant video. And yeah, mine's not as entertaining as yours is. Yours was really funny, but yeah, you know, good on you. Fabulous. See you later. Bye.